Hey everybody, it's Gregg Majewski, host of Room for Seconds. On this week's episode, I have the honor of having you listen to a legend in the industry. Somebody that has more guts than I do any which way, because he is bringing back not one, but two legendary brands, where you get to hear from Paul Mangiamele. Hit the subscribe button down below and don't miss any episode. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Room for Seconds. I have Paul Mangiamele, the man behind Bennigan's and legendary brands right now. He has been absolutely crushing it for generations, and I'm teasing him on that, but generations in this industry, and has known some of the greatest restaurant operators of all time. Today, I'm hoping to get a little bit of his knowledge so I can become a little bit smarter, but more importantly, we can see how to do it and do it right with hospitality first. Paul, thanks for joining.
It is my pleasure. It's good to see you, buddy. Happy 2025. Let's make it a great one.
Yeah, let's make it a great one. So, Paul, obviously you took a huge gamble when you took what most people would have considered a dying brand and bet on it. Why? What did you see?
Well, I've never been held prisoner by the naysayers out there. I refuse to acknowledge their doom and their gloom, and you can't do this, and everything's impossible. And my wife, my team, and I, we always think that, yeah, it really is possible, especially when you have the brands that actually started casual dining, not just Bennigan's, but Steak and Ale as well. And then over the last few years, we've introduced now a hybrid of Bennigan's called Bennigan's on the Fly, and we're doing quite well. But, you know, it's interesting that every brand goes through its ups and downs, and, you know, there's, you know, different owners involved, there's different objectives that are being set, what I try to do, again, when I say I mean the entire team and all the franchise partners that we have, is to bring back the culture that Steak and Ale and Bennigan's were founded on by Norman Brinker so many years ago. I mean, it's almost 6 decades of history. And I appreciate that, having grown up in the business as you did. And so when I looked at the sorry state that these brands were left in, I thought that, you know, one, they can be fixed, just like you found in your background. Two, they're the king and queen of casual dining. They pioneered the category. So all we have to do really is pay attention, give some tender loving care, get back to basics, which you should never leave in the first place, and return the brands to relevance. And it's no easy job. It's a Herculean endeavor, but it's definitely worth it when there are brands that are so close to people. There's an emotional connection that I found with the consumer group, with the supplier groups, with the alumni groups of all three brands. And it's one of those things that just touches your heart because people really care about the brand. And so when you can have emotional connection and you can reattach that connection and you can revitalize the brand and you can re-engineer the menu and you can bring back, you know, the name of my company, legendary service, not just okay service, not just mediocre service, but something with panache, something with flair, something that shows respect to your guest, not your customer, but your guest. And there's a differentiation in all that. Then you got something that I think is worthy of the Herculean effort. And it's been working really well. I mean, just so far in 2025, we have another for Bennigan's on the Fly. Believe it or not, Greg, there's another 30 in queue. That is just amazing. You know, thank God there's a new administration coming in. You know, interest rates have come into realistic levels. Inflation, there's somewhat of a control in there. But beyond all that, there's an optimism. Again, there's the spirit of capitalism, the spirit of franchising is back, and of course we're 100% franchise. And so people that have been waiting on the sidelines are now getting back into the fray. On the Steak and Ale side, as you know, you and I talked about this. We opened the Steak and Ale in Burnsville, Minnesota, to great fanfare, very high sales, and you know everybody thanked us for opening the first one in Minnesota. But now we have another 4 or 5 on the drawing board, from Florida to Texas to New Mexico. And so we're really pleased about that. But what's the common theme? I think that's maybe the crux of our conversation. The common theme is to pay attention to the culture. I don't know how many times There's these different brands in all retail, not just food service. And they get away from the very DNA that made the brand successful in the first place. They don't pay attention to their teams. They don't pay attention to the consumer, and they erode the culture that made them successful in the first place. It boggles the mind. It's counterintuitive, but it happens more than people know. And by replacing that, by honoring that, by preserving that, and by working on the menu, and I say this, the menu, the food, the bar, all the specialty drinks that we have, if you're not executing them at a very high level, then you shouldn't be in the game in the first place. So that's almost an assumption. So now what more can you do in terms of differentiation? Like the flair that we do tableside service. Nobody does tableside in casual dining anymore. Maybe in fine dining there's still a few that do that, but they're not franchise brands. They're usually independents that are doing that. And so with Bennigan's and Steak and Ale, we've brought that flair back, that customer interaction, where the customer then becomes a guest, and that builds frequency, that builds higher revenues, that builds more traffic, that builds more awareness, and these are all the things that we're all after in our business.
Right. So you've mentioned culture several times, and to the casual listener, culture means a million different things to a million different people. So what is your definition of the culture?
Yeah, good question. A culture, the way we define it, it's more, number one, it's about the people, the internal and external guest. So the internal guest is your employee, your team member. You got to pay attention to that. That authenticity that you give to the people that are representing your brand, that training, the environment that fosters teamwork is critical. And then to the customer that we call guests, to the guests, they are external, is what you have to make sure that you show them the respect for their hard-earned money. You give them the value for the money. So those are pieces of the culture. But also there's this crazy word that I don't see too much in our business anymore called passion. There's not a passion for the business. There's not a passion for food service. There's not a passion for the brand. And when you lose that, all is lost. And so it's the preservation of the culture that Norman Brinker started so many years ago. Steak and Ale in 1966 and Bennigan's 1976. And so when you have the people, when you have the culture, when you have the passion, and then when you have the desire to want to execute at that level, then you transform, you morph your business into not a transactional business, but an experiential business. The experiential side of this is, if it's well executed, builds lifetime customers that are worth tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over the lifetime of that guest, versus a one and done because you did not execute. So that's a differentiation of the culture and what we hold near and dear. And the people that get away from that are the ones that are always coming up with, well, we're going back to basics. We're going back to basics that you should never leave in the first place. It's amazing to me that I keep on seeing how many brands are talking about that when those are part and parcel of any operation in retail.
I can't agree more. I mean, it comes down to how you treat your people, how you treat your guests. And obviously, in our business, food is obviously the first thing you must have, but that's a given. If you don't have food, then you might as well not keep doors open.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and then for guys like us, we take a look at, okay, then we break that down. So is it a fad or is it a trend? And so, like, for example, I'll give you an anecdote.
And who's going to chase the trends? Because I'm going to interject. I pick on them all the time. Raising Cane's in any other situation would never have done what they did. Greatest concept to hit us in a long time. But because of the way COVID hit, they went through the roof. But who would have ever thought just having chicken tenders, fries, and a piece of Texas toast would send them to the moon like they did? Others are now copying that trend and failing.
Exactly. Like the grilled cheese concept, kind of a cute concept, poorly executed. And then they want to franchise immediately. They have no system. They have no support. And so the franchisees fail. The brand fails. their growth stops, and then what happens? We're facing more bankruptcies in the last 2 years than we've seen in this business for 40, 50 years. It's a sin. It's really a sin. However, the upside to that, great second generation space, that could be taken over and converted to a Bennigan's, a steak and ale, or some of your 50,000 concepts that you have. And, it's one of those things where, in every bad situation, there's always a silver lining of opportunity for the brands that do try hard, that do work hard, that do work smart, that pay attention to their customer. And for guys like us, I mean, you and I've had this discussion many times where, when you put your own money at risk, like I did when I bought the company, and I not just thought that I could reestablish the relevance of the brands, I bet everything I had on it. I put everything on the win line. And there's so many private equity and public companies where, the CEO really doesn't have skin in the game. They're paid to do a job, and they do what they can while they're looking for their next opportunity. Whereas when we make a commitment like we do, it's not my hobby, it's my life. And when I talk to my franchisees and they see the credibility, my franchise partners see the credibility that I have by spending and investing tens of millions of dollars, and they know I'm not going anywhere, there's a relationship that's instantly built. There's a fit there that's unique and different. And I love that when I talk to prospective franchise partners, that they get that immediately, especially since they're going to be investing in our brands. That's a very important point. And I think that's a big part of differentiation in terms of, how do you build your franchise organization or corporate one versus, and for longevity versus like I said before, a transactional one where you don't last too long. You might be the hot concept of the year, but they won't ever remember you in 5 years. And I think that's a telling point in our industry.
I'm Gregg Majewski, and I've been a multi-unit operator for 26 years. I know how great it feels owning the right franchise brand, but choosing the right franchisor feels even better. At Craveworthy Brands, our hospitality-driven culture sets us apart because we're invested in your success at every single stage of your journey. We're operators alongside you, paving the way forward to give you a head start on greatness. Start your franchise journey at craveworthybrands.com. Without a doubt. And it happens all the time. We don't ever learn, which is the worst part about this industry, is that we make the same mistakes over and over and over again. Because the knowledge doesn't transfer. Meaning that for a long, long time, there wasn't executives that shared. There wasn't owners and founders that actually communicated with each other. I think it's getting a little bit better now than it was. Yeah. But I mean, in the beginning, I had no one to talk to. Like, I didn't have anyone that could pick up the phone and say, hey, could you give me some advice? I was lucky when people decided to help me, without sharing that knowledge and learning from our mistakes and running from them, people don't ever get better. And I mean, and both of us have made mistakes as we're trying to do what we're trying to do. It's just common core. It has to happen. So with the mistake line, what's the one mistake while you were turning these around that you wish you could go back and do again?
Good question. Mistakes, there's always a learning curve, and no matter what you're doing. And I think in the beginning, because my situation was different, the Bennigans had just gone through in 2008 a disastrous bankruptcy. It's not Chapter 11, it's a Chapter 7. So game over, liquidation. And so there are still a lot of Bennigans when I took over, a lot of Bennigans out there just limping along because the corporate stores were bought by some of these new franchisees, but bought very cheaply, and they didn't appreciate the brand. It was just a flip for them. And I was slow to call it a day and just say, hey, look, you know what? You can operate this building, but it's not going to be a Bennigan's anymore, because I wanted to believe that everybody on the Bennigan's team that was left after bankruptcy really cared about the brand, really wanted to see it come back now, There was investment again. There was expertise in operations again. Great marketing programs again. All the different disciplines have been taken care of, and the support team was very strong. And yet there were people out there that just didn't want to uphold the standard. And you and I both know that the number one reason the franchisees fail is because they don't follow the system that they bought. They try to invent their own deal. And so as you go to the different locations, for me, in the very beginning, Bennigan's, I don't know what it was. It was poorly run. The menu was outrageous. They weren't following any standards at all. And so you go through the, 3 strikes you're out, try to get back into the team. Second strike, third strike. Hey, look, you'll do better as whatever you want to name it, Jimmy's Tavern, because you can't be at Bennigan's anymore. So the termination process that I used, even though, it's counterintuitive, right? In our business, like preserve every unit. It's like I thought that if I subtracted, I could add.
Right.
Yeah.
I
could get better franchisee quality, people that would toe the line, people that would follow the system, and then I could continue to grow the system, but using the right methodology and not letting these people that are tainting the brand continue to operate. So I was, my mistake was that I cared so much about the brand and the people that were still left that I wanted them to succeed, but they didn't want to. They were contributing to their failure, and I was slow to make that call.
It's a hard call. I mean, when you boot someone out to the system, it's the hardest call. So, I mean, I would have done the exact same thing. Work, overwork with them and hope that they can get there, right. Which sort of sucks.
But I learned this, though, and this is important for people that would listen, that it's more important to spend the majority of your time on the top 20% of your system than an inordinate amount of time and money and effort on the bottom 20%, because you're never going to get it. Our companies break down in thirds. There's a third that are just wonderful people. You want to clone them. There's a third that they can do better. But they need to do this. And I hate to use this word on this podcast with you, but it's a 4-letter word. I got to use it. It's called work. They don't want to work. They don't want to put in the effort. They're fat and they're happy. They're comfortable. They don't want to do the limited time offers, or they don't want to do the menu improvement. They don't want to work on the bar. They don't want to work on, the remodeling that needs to be done every couple of years. And then there's the bottom third where there's, situations change, where, the geography might change, the company that represented that franchise group change, or they just don't want to do it. And so instead of spending all the time and effort and money and trying to get these people up to the middle third, I'd rather get the top third and instead of doing 3 million, do 5 million, and that's the way I think you should focus any retailer, but specifically in our business and specifically in franchising.
Yeah. So when we took over Dirty Dough, my first conversation with that franchise group was 20 to 30 of you will not be here in a year. And it was my first introduction to the group. Like, I didn't hold back. I just point blank said, hey, you're not going to be here. Now, they've surprised me. They're still hanging on, a lot of them. But yet they asked me in my last call with them, hey, do you still think? I'm like, yes, I still think it will still be that number. You guys are fighting and holding on, but you're putting money after money after money after something that, one, you're not going to go and operate it. You're not going to go down there and do what you're supposed to do. And you're in a horrible location. You're going to save money by shutting the doors. That has to happen sometimes, and my dad told me it when I got into the restaurant business. He said, look at restaurants like I look at machines in my factory. When I take a job, not every job is going to be a home run. The faster I walk away from the bad ones, the better off I'm going to be in long term, and stronger because I'm moving on to the next thing. But when you put your life savings into something, you don't know how to do that. You're afraid to do that. And that's what you and I face today, is that we're put our life savings in and we're trying to do something, and neither of us would give up. It would take an army to move us out today, but we have a path and we're following the systems and procedures, and we believe in where we're going and we're seeing results. too many mom and pop startups don't cut the loss when it's not working to save themselves long term. You know, and that's a lesson that I can't stress to people enough, is that if you can't get there within 2 or 3 years, the restaurant's not getting there. You know, it's time to move on.
Very true. Yeah, and let me add to the comment in terms of what guys like us are doing. Beyond the P&L, beyond the strategy, beyond the business plans, it's a legacy. You know, we're only here for a minute on this earth. And, you know, those of us that try to make it count, not only for our families, which is, you know, you bifurcate, right? So you got your family side, but you got your business side, and how that's going to be defined, not now, not today, but in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. Because I take the legacy that I inherited from Norman Brinker, because I know I've never lost, and I had the pleasure of actually knowing him and being a friend of his, but he was everybody's friend. But my wife and I went out to dinner with him. You know, I've gone out with he and his son, and so there's a knowledge there, there's an appreciation and a respect there, and I know I'm standing on his shoulders. And you know, this was way before I took over the brands, but these are only 2 brands he ever created, and so when I take the legacy very seriously. So. And so my goals, in addition to running the business, in addition to continue to grow, not just domestically but internationally, is to preserve that culture and legacy for generations to come, because I think it's that important.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it all the time. Every time I've heard you speak, how these are the only 2 restaurants that Norm ever created. These are his babies. You know, and somebody so powerful and dynamic in our industry, you know, it's sort of amazing that these are the 2. You know, you would have thought there'd be so many more, some of the other ones that he was a part of, but it comes down to these 2. Now, you said earlier that you're seeing sort of a resurgence in casual dining. So, and Chili's obviously has had a huge uptick in everything that they're doing with the burger price and the QSR being extremely stupid and overpricing what the food is. Where does casual dining go now with pricing and cost of goods sold and everything else? Because again, your price point is remarkably good and you get an incredible quality, but at some point your rents are a hell of a lot higher than everything else. How do you play that balance and what's next?
Well, you got to take a look at how do you create revenue outside the 4 walls? So a lot of times, operators for years and years and years, you know, strolled up to the door, unlocked it, and people just came. So great lunch, great dinner, great late night, maybe great bar business, maybe, you know, those of us in casual dining, and that was good enough. That was good enough for TGI Fridays. But today, that dog won't hunt, and I'll tell you why. Because there has to be, in addition to that, as you already mentioned, the cost of operations are higher, whether it's the rent factor, the cost of goods, the labor, point to anything. Everything is higher, 30, 40% higher than 5 or 6 years ago. So some of us had to, you know, take price. It was incumbent upon us to take price. Now, price is another 300-hour discussion in terms of where's the inflection point. When is it too high, where people defect and they just won't pay it? So I think that, again, for us, it's to deliver that value proposition. Like, for example, in Steak and Ale, we have a Hawaiian chicken that is well known. It just has a great reputation. It's 2 chicken breasts, it's rice pilaf, it's sauteed broccoli, it's salad bar all you can eat, and a free loaf of bread with honey butter that we make everything in-house. $17. You can't go to Chipotle and get a burrito with a drink and guacamole for $17, closer to 20. So the value proposition has to be sound. You know, the value proposition perceived by the guests has to be sound. And those are the kinds of things that we continue to drive for lunch and dinner, and then catering, delivery. And I know you're well versed in all that. The delivery aspects, the packaged goods to go aspects, the community, neighborhood marketing aspects. all those have to be worked just as hard as you work on lunch and dinner. And these are the kinds of things from the ancillary revenues that come into your operation. Like for us, I've started a retail line now where you can actually buy the Hawaiian chicken glaze from Steak and Ale, or we're working right now on getting the Bennigan's world famous Monte Cristo and getting that package so that it's already par fried. You just have to warm it up, and I will sell millions of them in different retailers under a host kitchen scenario. These are the things that we're doing from a ancillary standpoint in order to drive revenues from an aggregate. And these kinds of things are working because if all of us are just dependent, 100% dependent on what's going on inside the four walls, we're going to come up short, especially with some of the costs that continue to escalate. However, with the reduction in the interest rate, the supply chain now that is working pretty doggone well, finally, even though we're going to have some fits and starts with bird flu or some kind of commodity disruption, the net is that it's a hell of a lot better than it ever was. I think we're going to see some decrease in pricing. Cost of goods will come down, not to where it used to be, but maybe another 100 basis points or so, where it will help us in our P&L standpoint. Same thing with labor utilization. For us in casual dining, they talk about robotics, and I'm one of the old school guys who would say we're never going to go robotics, all right? Because the relationship between the guests and our team members is sacrosanct to us. I won't abdicate that. In the back of the house, if there's some technology that will help us with prep and the delivery of the food, that's fine. But we're never going to get rid of bartenders. We're never going to get rid of our dining room staff. We're never going to get rid of our hosts and hostess. Those people will always stay, be a part of us, because that's the very fabric that built our emotional connection that has lasted over 6 decades.
I want to know, brand was dead. You bought the rights to the brand, and you decided to bring back Steak and Ale. With the headaches you had at Bennigan's and building that, what in the right mind made you decide to take a gamble and bring back something that had been gone for so long?
Well, despite a masochistic streak, I'll tell you what I did. I met with my team and I said, hey, look, I grew up with both brands. I loved them. I loved them then. I love them now. We own them. Do you think anybody wants to see them as bad as we do? So I said, let's start a Facebook page. It's called Steak and Ale Comeback on Facebook. Still there. 55,000 people rooting for a brand that only existed until Burnsville opened in Minnesota in their hearts and minds. And so they overwhelmingly told me that, yeah, we love that brand and we want it back. And they told me what they wanted. They told me the salad bar, they told me the bread, they told me the soup, they told me the entrees, they told me the prime rib, everything that you could possibly hope for, from an emotional connection, vomiting all over you with their nostalgia. And that's when I thought, we're going to create nostalgia now. We're going to create this emotional connection again with these brands, with all the generations, not just the generations that remember it, because it's still relevant. We got to put it a little hipper. We got to get cool with the bar. We got to do flair. We got to make it fun. We got to have a good vibe. We got to bring back the energy. We got to spend an inordinate amount of time on train, so they can deliver that service at the table, especially when we're doing tableside. And it all came together. Now, it took 5 years. It wasn't like, voila, we got it. I had to recreate everything with my team. Like, where do you get we had the recipe for the bread, but where are we going to get the ingredients? We had the bread board, but where are you going to buy them? A lot of the vendors back then were either out of business or dead. They couldn't find them. So we had all the recipes. So from a supply chain standpoint, we looked at different iterations of steak, prime rib, chicken. I mean, again, it was a long, laborious project, but it was worth it to me because this is what we're all about in our business, man. If you don't love it, don't do it. If you don't want to work hard, don't do it. Go work at a bank. We call it bleeding green 25/8. If you don't want to put your heart and soul into your brand, then don't do it. Nobody forcing you. Like we have a mission and a purpose. I'm sure you do too. If you don't want to learn it, that's fine. Go work at Applebee's. We just don't want you. We just don't want you. If you don't have pride in what we do, then because the team is everything. You and I can work 28 hours a day, but at the end of the day, in the restaurant, it's that person, that point of contact with your guests, that will be the deciding factor whether that person will ever come back or not. So if they don't have any passion, they can't embrace the culture. They didn't learn anything in their training. They could care less. They're looking at their Instagram feed while they're trying to take an order. You don't want them. And there are people that actually care. And those are the people that we're looking for. Far and few between, man. But I see that when you get an eagle versus a turkey, the eagles want other eagles to work with them. And they call the turkeys out, man. They just kick them out. We don't even have to do anything. They said, we don't want that guy. We don't want that woman. They're taking a 2-hour prep and making it all day. They're taking 8 hours to do a 2-hour prep. You don't want that guy. So, it's an interesting dynamic when you have a team of eagles that are passionate, that get the culture, that actually want to do a good job and see the opportunity, like for us, to grow. We all bust tables, man. We wash dishes. I know I did. My uncle had a trattoria in New York City. I'm scrubbing pots and pans. I'm making pots. I cut my fingers off on the slicer because I was so busy trying to do 20 things. And he gave me $1 in quarters at the end of the night. I thought I was rich, but I learned a lot. I love the vibe. I love the energy. Every day is different in a restaurant, every single day. And if you got a team that's cohesive, where they work together, and I'm going to use this word, it's kind of corny, and they love one another, they respect one another, man, you got to beat. I don't care what your brand is. If they care that much, you're going to do well. You're going to do well because then you can execute. And the guest doesn't know exactly why it felt great. They just know they're coming back, and that's the crux. That's the crux of our business, man.
Yes, it is. Paul, where can everyone find you and follow you and learn more about your brands?
Well, you told me not to do this, but I'm going to do this. So I wrote a book about returning to relevance. It's called, Bleeding Green 25-8, right? It's mathematically impossible, but it's a work ethic thing, right? It's a passion thing. And, you can get it on, you can go to Bennigans.com. We got steakandale.com. We have legendaryrestaurantbrands.com. So you can get it. It's not expensive. I give all the proceeds to the Veterans Administration for the VetFran off of the IFA because I want to help those guys in whatever capacity I can. But listen, it's good to see you. I want to wish you a very happy 2025, a successful one, a safe one, and God bless those folks out there in California. Hopefully everything will work out okay.
It's only got to get better. 2025 has got to just start getting better.
Amen, brother.
Dallas is getting snowed in. Snowstorms everywhere. Fires. I thought 2024 was rough. My start of 2025 has not been good. I've aged 15 years in 2 weeks. It's not a good start.
Hasn't caught up to you. Well, it hasn't caught up to your face yet. So that's good.
Paul, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you and everything
My pleasure,
you've done for the industry. Everybody, that's another episode of Room for Seconds. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below so you don't miss any episode. Thank you for listening or watching, and can't wait to have you back next week. Hey viewers, thanks again for supporting Room for Seconds. If you found this episode inspiring, interesting, or any bit informative, please hit that little subscribe button down at the bottom so you never miss an episode. In my 26 years in this amazing industry, I've been blessed with incredible mentorship. This show is my way of giving back. Follow me on LinkedIn, search Gregg Majewski, on Twitter, @Gregg_Majewski. If you still have room for more, visit our website at media.craveworthybrands.com. You'll find more videos, shows, notes, blogs, resources, and an easy way to get in touch with the Craveworthy Brands team. I'm your host, Gregg Majewski. Thanks again for tuning in to Room for Seconds.